Hi, this is Mike Palmer. I'm delighted to bring you my conversation with Dan Porterfield, the CEO and president of the Aspen Institute. Dan's written a really wonderful book called Mindset Matters, where he outlines five different elements of a growth mindset that are all really part of what a positive college experience is like. And that's really the focus of his book, Mindset Matters. I get into it in good depth with Dan in a bit, but before we do that, here's a little bit of Dan going into detail about each of the five mindsets we'll discuss as part of the conversation that we'll dig into in a bit. Hope you enjoy.
The five growth mindsets each are highly relevant for today's fast changing economy where you have to be able to adapt constantly and quickly. They are number one, the mindset to discover, which means that you yourself can ask the question that leads to the answer that nobody told you. The second is the mindset to create. And that's the mindset that you yourself can invent a program, a work of art, create a new business. You can stamp your tattoo on the community you're a part of. You can add something to it. You're an innovator, a maker. The third mindset is the mindset to collaborate. And that's the mindset that says you can join any group of people, however diverse and far-flung, and help them together achieve the power of effective collective action, the power of we. And group work is so important for any kind of problem solving today.
Mhm.
The fourth mindset is the mindset to mentor, to give and receive mentoring. And that's the mindset that says, I am able to pass on insights to other people that will allow those people to achieve their potential because I intervened and helped smooth the path for them. And that mindset for mentorship is essential for professional life and productive life today in the economy. You
Mhm.
have to be able to learn as you go.
Mhm.
And then finally, the fifth mindset that I call the mindset for striving to grow towards what you value. And by striving, what I mean is that self-directed sense that I will go and grow towards what I care about. If I care about helping older people, I will pursue growth that makes me able to work with older people. If what I care about is learning how to bring together people that don't speak the same language and help them learn to work together, that I can grow and strive towards being a connector. So those five mindsets, discovery, creating, collaboration, mentorship, and striving, I think are the elements of effective and productive working and citizenship in the 21st century, dominated by fast change. And these mindsets give the individual the feeling of agency and power and control. I don't have to be whipsawed by change. I can learn, I can create, I can collaborate. And when young people or people of any age have that confidence that they themselves can drive their own development, that gives them the feeling of power that they can choose the life they want to live. And that feeling of power is what we want our young people to have. Every young person in your life, every child in your life, you want them to grow up believing that they aren't captive to other people's whims, but that they can chart their own course. And the way to help them do that is develop that inner capacity for constant learning.
Welcome to Trending in Education. Mike Palmer here. I'm joined today by Dan Porterfield, who's the CEO of the Aspen Institute. He's also the author of a really fascinating book called Mindset Matters: The Power of College to Activate Lifelong Learning. We'll include a link to this in the show notes for the episode. It's dropping like it's hot at the end of June. Dan, welcome to Trending in Education.
Thank you, Mike. It's great to see you again, and thanks for hosting me. This is actually the first interview that I've done about this book. It's a couple weeks from being officially available, and thank you for helping me to get out there.
Absolutely. And in the spirit of growth mindset, we know we're going to crush it. That's the good part.
Exactly.
So, to start, we always like to begin by getting to know our guests in their own words. Can you share with us your origin story, how you got to this point in your professional life?
Well, sure. Thank you, Mike. So I was born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, the son of educators. My dad was a public school teacher in Baltimore for 40 years. My mom went to college in her 30s at Towson College, and because she was a great student, kept going to college
Hmm.
after she got her BA to get a master's and to get a PhD
All right.
in frontier history and American history
Hmm.
and the stories of women in the American West. So she ultimately became, in her 50s, a very eminent scholar of American history.
Hmm.
And I was fortunate enough, unlike my parents, to be able to go right to college after high school. I went to
Right.
Georgetown
Right.
and later went to Oxford University and the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. I
Hmm.
worked in higher education for about 20 years as senior vice president and a professor at Georgetown University, and then as president of Franklin and Marshall College for almost 8 years. And
Right.
I've now been at the helm of the Aspen Institute for almost 6 years.
Right. And that's quite a run. There's a lot in there, including a stint where your family was living in the residences at Georgetown.
You got it. For 8 years, from 2003 until 2011,
Wow.
we were the faculty family living in Copley Hall in a
Hmm.
faculty apartment.
Yeah.
My wife, Karen, is a saint. Our three daughters, Lizzie, Caroline, and Sarah, had the run of that dorm,
Oh, wow.
365 days a year.
Yeah.
And we loved it. We loved
Yeah.
being the faculty family available to students. And it was a great way for our kids to grow up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that context then led you to the Aspen Institute, but a lot of that context in higher ed and even the story of your mom, is reflected in Mindset Matters, which in some ways is about higher education. But before we get into that, how about just quickly on the Aspen Institute, that role, what the Aspen Institute is doing?
Yeah. So the Aspen Institute is a global nonprofit organization. And our purpose is to ignite human potential for understanding and for new possibilities for a better world.
Hmm.
We have about 600 employees. We're working all around the world on education, on healthcare, on expanding economic opportunity,
Hmm.
on leadership development, and on bringing ideas into the public domain for discussion, reflection, and action.
Hmm.
And it's a great organization, nonpartisan, very optimistic in its approaches. And I've been the CEO now for almost 6 years. We have a couple of very strong programs that work on college issues or with college age students.
Hmm.
Our College Excellence program, led by Josh Weiner, has 2 points of focus. First of all, it helps America's two-year colleges dramatically improve their ability to propel students into family-sustaining jobs.
Hmm.
And then also we work with a different part of the higher ed sector, the more selective public and private institutions
Hmm.
that are four-year institutions. And on those schools, we're working to help them significantly increase opportunity of enrollment and graduation for lower income students.
Right. That's very
So
Pell Grant oriented, among other
exactly,
things. Yep. Hmm.
exactly. And America's two-year colleges are a tremendous asset, and they've improved a great deal over
Yep.
the past 15 or 20 years. And our four-year colleges have always been the envy of the world. There's an enormous number of international students that choose to pursue their BAs in America because of the nature of the American style of education.
Right.
While there's been a lot of controversy, of course, around our four-year colleges in
Right.
recent years, they're still pretty much the envy of the world.
Right. And that's part of the context that Mindset Matters was really written in, was in some ways a positive framing of higher education that really I hadn't seen out there, frankly. There's a lot of critiques, a lot of books getting published about the problems in the model. And, I'm sure you are aware of many
Oh
of
yeah.
them. And yet the long-term benefit of the college degree and other cases to be made for the benefits of higher ed, maybe they're out there, they're perhaps not voiced that strongly. And then in particular, framing it around growth mindset, the work of Carol Dweck, and then going a little bit deeper in terms of the ways of thought, the ways of operating, the ways of being that young folks are really equipped with in the best case
Yeah.
around higher ed. Can you frame up what drove you to write the book?
Sure thing. I think what I would like to say in response to your comment is that there are sizable problems, but they're solvable.
Hmm,
But we need to make sure that we have the will to solve the problems.
right.
And to do that, we also need to appreciate what is it that college offers,
Mhm.
especially 18 to 23-year-olds at
Yep.
a very formative moment of their transition from late adolescence into early and emerging adulthood.
Right.
What is it that college offers millions of young people at its
Mhm.
best?
Mhm.
And how can we make sure that we are strengthening and doubling down on what works while also fixing the things that are problems?
Yeah.
And so I chose to write this book, which looks at the success stories and learning experiences of about 40 of my mentees from Franklin and Marshall College, where I was president from 2011 to 2018, because I see so much power and beauty and value in their learning journeys.
Mhm.
And I had the privilege as president of presiding over 8 graduations at Franklin and Marshall,
Right.
where 500 to 600 students walked across the stage in front of their families,
Mhm.
tears in their eyes,
Yeah.
because there was so much they had learned, so much they had grown. They couldn't imagine their lives
Right.
without those experiences, and they were so proud. Their families were so proud.
Mhm.
And somewhere in the all of the criticisms of college, which come from multiple quarters, we're not also focusing on what is it that's valuable that students appreciate deeply and that positions them and empowers them to be able to live the lives they seek after college. So
Yeah.
that's what I tried to write about. Not
Mhm.
to deny that there's problems, but to make sure that we're thinking about what is the baby in this bathwater that we want to save.
Exactly. Well, and also it did make me think as well in terms of the types of growth mindsets. There's 5 that you outline in the book, including just flourishing in general and a lot of positive psychology and other things, wellness. But there's also, I guess, ways in which you can inculcate that in others. You mentioned mentorship as one of the key competencies here. There is a lot of, I guess, reflection on the benefits of, even the context to, you and your family living on campus, I imagine even gave this a
Yeah.
little bit more depth, but the power of the positive relationships that can be forged when this approach works at its best.
Yeah. Let me dig in for a second. So during COVID, I reached out to a number of my Franklin and Marshall mentees, asked them how they were doing, and asked them to think with me about what they would describe as the value of their college education. And all of them talked about relationships formed, learning achieved,
Hmm.
a sense of optimism and of capability that they
Yeah.
were bringing into their endeavors. And as I listened to story after story, a pattern emerged for me. And the pattern was that during their college experience, all of my mentees, I mean this, all of them, had had relationships with faculty or experiences of learning that gave them the confidence that in the future they could drive their own development.
Hmm.
That college was equipping them with skills and experiences that let them believe that they were able to lead their own learning,
Hmm.
that they could do it.
Hmm.
Think of it almost like a booster rocket that lifts them off, and then the
Right.
rocket pulls back when they graduate and they keep going.
Right.
And so again and again, I heard that from students. It took this idea of that they had the mindset that they could learn, that they could grow,
Yeah.
took different forms. For some, they said, I know that I am somebody who can constantly discover and learn now on my
Yeah.
own.
Right.
College prepared me. Some others said, I'm a maker. I can create things. And I learned to do that and learned
Hmm.
that I have that skill and that calling in college.
Yeah.
For others, it was that they said, I know that I'm a teammate. I know that
Mm.
I can work with others. I know that
Mm.
I can make a group better because I'm part of it.
Yeah.
And so on. And so this idea that one benefit of a residential college experience, and I hope of other types of college learning too, is that you come out of the experience able to think that I have the agency, I have the power, I have the ability to discover, to create, to
Hmm.
team up with others,
Right.
to pursue my own goals, to mentor one and to get mentoring. And that those mindsets are exactly what today's economy demands. The world we live in today is changing so quickly. The pace of change is just escalating and escalating,
Hmm.
mainly because of technological change. Most recently, the advent of generative artificial intelligence,
Yep.
but also there's big demographic change, there's change in climate, there's change in
Yeah.
the economy, there's change in politics.
Yeah.
If everything's changing quickly, what is it the individual has to be able to do? Adapt to change,
Yeah.
drive change. And to cope with change, we have to believe that we have the capacity to learn and grow. And so
Hmm.
that was really a big breakthrough insight for me from these interviews,
Yeah.
was that in a time of escalating change where everything's disrupted, our students felt confidence in their ability to drive their own growth going forward.
Yeah. It does remind me of the concept of productive struggle or desirable difficulty. There is a passage. Not everyone successfully gets across into adulthood with some sense of direction. That's the other element that I liked is the striving component here
Yeah.
as well. Like folks who are really thinking about how they can impact the world with things that they personally value and want to understand how to make that impact.
Yeah. So let's focus on the desirable difficulties point. You're dead on. And of course, sometimes in college, you have to also deal with undesirable difficulties too. You
Hmm.
get both the ones that are like productive, a hard class, a
Yeah.
challenging job, a difficult moment of breakthrough learning that you have to take responsibility in a new way. And then
Yeah.
there's the undesirable ones where a parent passes away or
Right.
where something really terrible happens within a friend group at school.
Yeah.
And so part of the learning experience of college is being able to believe
Mm.
that you have the ability to maximize opportunity and deal with difficulty.
Mm.
And what helps students deal with difficulties in part is faculty mentors who are available
Yeah.
to them, present and able to help them have a sense of perspective. I
Hmm.
write in this book about a student named Wyatt Fabian who transferred to F&M, having started his college career at another institution where he was there to play Division I soccer, but he felt unfulfilled. And one reason he felt unfulfilled was his mother had passed away in a car accident
Mm.
before college. An
Mm.
undesirable difficulty,
Yeah.
but also a desirable difficulty. He felt unfulfilled.
Hmm.
And so he transferred to F&M, where he found his passion for learning in the small classes, heavily curated and mentored by faculty, and where he was able to adopt a perspective on the challenge of his mother's passing and also find a sense of purpose from rigorous classes that invited him to be, if you will, like the author of his own discoveries.
Right.
So those two together played out. But being in a meaning rich campus environment with 24/7 activities and stimulation, other meaning oriented friends, and then heavily involved adult figures, professors, in his case, his coach in
Yeah.
soccer, Dan Wagner, all that added up to his emerging out of college 3 years after he transferred
Mm.
with a sense of confidence and fulfillment and the knowledge that he could deal with hardship and that he could also deal with everyday challenges extremely
Right.
well.
Right. Right.
I wrote about a few other students who also encountered that combination of desirable and undesirable difficulties
Yeah.
and came out of college more self-actualized, more fulfilled because they dealt with both pretty well.
Right. Yeah, and you have to learning how to deal with hardship, productive struggle in part
Yeah.
is learning to endure. And that is something coming out of the last few years. Resilience is something folks have been talking more about. Post-traumatic growth is another frame that I've heard around all of this. I would be curious also outside of higher education, there are other ways I imagine for folks to develop similar growth mindsets, whether it's military service, public service, apprenticeship models are getting a little bit more
Yes.
attention depending on who you're talking to, maybe a little more from the Aspen Institute angle. I
Yeah.
imagine it's kind of a both end,
Oh,
where
yeah. Thank you. My argument isn't that college is the only place where we can activate growth mindsets in younger people. I do think it has a density of resources and experience that make it ideal for that.
right.
But absolutely, work, service, military service, family life, faith life, all of these
Hmm.
can facilitate that inner confidence. But what does that really mean to do that? So I think number one, we develop a growth mindset because we have actually grown.
Mm.
Like a growth mindset can't be predicated on non-growth.
Right.
Um, so we learn, but also we know we're learning.
Hmm.
So that's a really important part of developing growth mindsets is
Hmm.
sequencing learning
Yeah.
so that the learner can see,
Yeah.
oh, I just did that. Oh, I just mastered that.
It's a
Oh, I
little it's a little metacognition.
yes, exactly. What a great way to put it. So it's learning, it's knowing you're learning. There's two more things. It's knowing that you can learn in the future, that
Mm.
you're learning how to learn.
Yeah.
So I've learned, I know I've learned, I know how to learn. And then the last part, I love learning. It's who I am.
Mm. Hmm.
I'm a learner. I'm
Yeah.
a creator. I'm a
Right.
teammate.
Right.
Growth mindsets become part of identity. We
Mm.
do it, we know we did it, we know how to do it, and we love doing it.
Right.
And that can be fostered absolutely in other settings. I think more and more employers
Yes.
are actually being a bit intentional about how to build growth journeys for
Right.
their employees.
Yeah, I really liked the ties to talent development in the book and the idea of growth mindset as viewed more through the lens of talent, where if you can demonstrate a growth mindset, it's extremely hireable. It is a durable, resilient skill set that you really have with you for the rest of your life. I thought that connection, even that as part of the responsibility of higher ed, the
Yeah.
talent development component, I hadn't really seen that connection, and I thought that was an interesting one.
Yeah, Mike, thank you for asking for reading it so closely, first of all. But yeah, uh, the capacity to learn and the yearning to learn, the ability to learn, the belief you can learn is talent.
Yeah.
We think of talent sometimes as, okay, well, show me your grades, show me your test scores,
Mm.
tell me what your teacher said about you. And I admit you can assess talent those ways.
Right.
But what about seeing talent as the capacity to maximize opportunity?
Mm. Hmm.
Who has that capacity?
Yeah.
And one of the things we learned at Franklin and Marshall College when we developed our talent strategy along the lines of what we're talking about
Yeah.
is that a lot of lower income students really demonstrated high growth mindset potential
Hmm.
because they had had fewer opportunities in their lives relative to more advantaged students, but they
Yeah.
pursued them.
Hmm.
And they had a vision for college. They knew why they wanted to go. They knew why
Right.
they wanted to learn more.
Yeah.
And they dealt with difficulty and kept going. So they had resilience.
Hmm.
And that combination of saying yes to opportunity, even if you have less,
Right.
having resilience to persevere through difficulty,
Hmm.
having a vision of education, and being willing to prioritize learning above other distractions that can take over college life.
Right.
Those are attributes, I would argue, of talent.
Right. And even from the lens of like first generation higher ed, the idea that if they can feel a sense of belonging, if they can get over the imposter syndrome, all concepts that are connected to growth mindset and really how higher ed is trying to respond to the
Yeah,
population of today, it's really critical, I think, to understand that they're already talented. They just might not have the scaffolds, the supports. This is where mentorship and the hidden curriculum come in.
yeah,
But like, how do you bridge those folks in who in some ways have shown
yeah.
their talent just by getting to the point that they're in your university?
So let me say three quick things. So I wrote about Charisma Lambert, who experienced imposter syndrome her first year at F&M.
Mm,
And the way that she was able to break through that was that she went and met with faculty, and she had the amazing insight that her background and her life story were subjects that could be studied in college, that she could learn about the things that had shaped her life growing
mm,
up in Newark.
mhm.
And when she made that connection, that school and scholarship could allow her to develop understandings of her own story,
Yeah.
imposter syndrome melted away. She's
Mm,
now in a graduate program at the University of Chicago in public policy after having worked in Teach for America.
mhm.
Second story is a student named Nadia Johnson, and she came to F&M, very high achiever at an Achievement First public charter school, and she came in pre-med. Why? Because she thought high achieving students should be pre-med.
Mhm.
But she didn't see the connection between pre-med and what she valued. But she was in it because she valued being a successful student. And that's what
Yeah.
successful students did, she thought. They took
Mhm.
pre-med.
Mhm.
After her first year, in meeting with faculty and in thinking back on the people in her home community of New Haven who had dealt with difficulties,
Yeah.
she realized that she needed to choose a course of study that spoke to what she wanted to learn.
Mhm.
And so she went into sociology and women's studies, excelled, has now been an educator in Baltimore in the KIPP public charter school system for 6 years and is
Yeah.
now a school leader.
Mhm.
But in her case, the imposter syndrome part was that the major she was taking not because of her own values,
Yeah.
but because she thought she had to live into somebody else's model of what a college student is.
Mhm.
And then a third story is of 10 students who came to F&M together from Miami. They all were interested in STEM fields, and we recruited them through the college access program, the Posse Foundation.
Mm.
And these 10 students, all from different public schools in Miami, entered together and became a support group for one another for 4 years.
Mm.
And were like this. They were so close. They were supporting each other's aspiration to maximize college, to grow and
Mhm.
change, to become a more complete version of themselves. And that sort of reminds us about the importance of peer networks in reinforcing students' yearnings to be growers and learners.
Yeah.
The Posse program has been spectacularly successful across the country, largely because it's made it, structured it so that students could be in peer groups that were mutually reinforcing of
Mhm.
their aims to grow and learn.
Yeah.
So I say this to say that imposter syndrome is real and it's tricky and it can be dealt with.
Mhm.
Absolutely can be dealt with.
Yeah. Well, it's also the culture. This is, culture eats strategy for lunch. Like, if the culture is actually welcoming people who have imposter syndrome and trying to get rid of it, that's great. But if the culture
Yeah,
is more reinforcing imposter syndrome and saying some of us are good at math, some of us aren't good at math, some of us are set up to work, in the financial services, some of us aren't, a lot of it is sort of the framing
got it.
of your culture.
That's one of the responsibilities of faculty. Faculty need to make sure that the faculty as a body, as a complete group, make it so that every student can find a caring and engaged adult who's welcoming, supportive, yes, challenging in a constructive way. And there's no reason why across the whole scope of a faculty, every single student couldn't find a couple to connect with.
Hmm.
At F&M, something I saw that was very inspiring was that more and more faculty became more and more interested in mentoring first generation college students
Mm.
as the number of those students increased, because we tripled our enrollment of low income students when I was
Mm.
there.
Hmm.
And it was so inspiring to see different professors in chemistry and psychology and English
Yeah.
pick your field, say, I want to get more involved. I love these kids. They're
Yeah.
working so hard. They're so sincere. They're
Hmm.
not complaining about their grades. They're asking how they can learn more. Let me
Right.
do more. So
Right.
that's one of the big themes of this story, is
Yeah.
that caring adults, involved faculty, have an incredible power to help young people develop growth mindsets.
Yeah. And then I imagine there's some natural connections between growth mindset and you mentioned artificial intelligence. That is something that comes up on just about every show, and we haven't addressed it head on. Thoughts on that and advice for folks who are trying to figure out how the future of work relates to what they're doing and what's going on in higher ed. Folks are kind of shook. And
Yeah,
then this technology wave we're right in the midst of is probably shaking them up a little more. Any thoughts,
yeah.
suggestions to folks who are thinking about that stuff?
First of all, let's identify what is human intelligence, and
Mm.
let's invest in the cultivation of human intelligence,
Mm.
which I think includes being able to pursue a learning agenda that you set for yourself.
Mhm.
It includes being able to interrogate and separate fact from fiction.
Mhm.
It includes being able to express your ideas and others' ideas. And human intelligence includes being able to work with groups and with people that are different than yourself.
Yeah.
All those things are going to matter more, not less, as artificial intelligence and other technologies change the work lives that we have, the nature of our jobs.
Yeah.
Second thing I'd say is that I think it's very valuable and important to engage ourselves in a dialogue about what is ethical, what is it we value in humanity, what is it we
Mm.
value in how we engage and treat one another,
Yeah.
so that we are able to, I hope, influence the uses of artificial intelligence
Mhm.
and shape what it's used for and what it's not used for. And
Right.
to that goal, bringing an ethical sensibility
Mhm.
to technological development, I think that a college education that emphasizes dialogue, listening, learning together, community experience is really powerful.
Yeah. And then the cogs in the machine here, in some ways it's the educational system needs to fit together with the career system on the other side. There is, there's a torch on the cover of Mindset Matters. And in some ways it is passed from the university to the professional life
Yeah.
that students really emerge into. So a lot of activity on that side of the equation nowadays and a lot of thinking about that. I'd love to get a little bit of your perspective on that side of things.
So I think what you're saying, and this is a great point, thank you, is that those that have the ability to adapt and learn can help to shape artificial intelligence to solve problems and improve society. And
Mhm.
that's a big, huge opportunity, whether in biomedical research or in alternative energy or in being able to conduct more accurate research because the data systems are much bigger.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of potential for economic development and human development in the productive use of new technology.
Mm.
So that's also certainly part of what we hope college educated younger professionals will be able to do. One of the realities of American higher education is that in every other wave of technological breakthrough, the American worker has gotten stronger and the American economy has gotten stronger,
Mhm.
not weaker.
Mm.
That was the story of the 20th century, that our education system was so good that technology did not displace workers, but it empowered workers.
Right.
There's a lot to say about whether we can sustain that in this
Mm.
era.
Mhm.
But I would argue that investing in education at every level, from pre-K through the PhD,
Yeah.
and all forms of education, not just college education, is crucial to the nation's competitiveness economically and to our democracy. The better educated our people are, the more likely our society will thrive in a really rapidly changing global economy.
Amazing stuff here with Daniel R. Porterfield, the CEO of the Aspen Institute. He's also the author of Mindset Matters, The Power of College to Activate Lifelong Learning. Dan, it's been a great conversation. Really do appreciate having you on. The book was excellent. I'll include links to it in the show notes so folks can check it out. Folks who stuck with us this long, it's time for the big finish. Any takeaways, any parting thoughts for our listeners as they head back to the rest of their lives?
I think so. I have a saying I like to come back to, which is that each one of us has the power to create the education that we seek. We have that power with our effort, with our creativity, with our optimism. Even a person who might be in prison, even a person who might be alone, even a person who might not think they've succeeded ever before in education. We do have the power to create the learning and the growth we seek. And our role as educators should be to activate that power in others. If we can do that, we give people the gift of the greatness that's inside of them. And if there's ever a time when you as a student are thinking, there's nothing more I can do, the system's not helping me, that may be true that you're facing challenges, but lean on your own creativity, your own drive, your own purpose, and see if you can't actually create for yourself new learning. And when you do that, remember that you can do it again.
Amazing stuff here. Hopefully, we can maybe apply some growth mindset on higher ed and aspire to something more. Some really amazing thoughts put out here by Dan Porterfield. Dan, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode.
Thank you, Mike. See you soon.
And for our listeners, hopefully you enjoyed what you heard. If you did, please subscribe, write us a review, tell your friends. This is Trending in Education. Thank you for listening.